When you sit down to play a really complex board game, and
Mhm.
there's always that one person who, completely ignores the pieces on the board and immediately starts studying the rule book.
Oh, yeah. We all know that person.
Right, and they aren't looking for instructions. They're looking for the loopholes. They want to know exactly where the absolute edges of the game are, just so they can push right past them.
Which is, I mean, it's arguably the defining characteristic of human progress. We have this innate intolerance for parameters.
Yeah,
The
totally.
moment someone draws a boundary, whether it's, the limit of physical endurance or the boundaries of a scientific field or even art, our immediate collective instinct is to figure out how to break it.
Exactly. And welcome to you, the listener, to today's custom-tailored deep dive. We have a massive eclectic stack of sources today drawn from the Sunday Blender, dated May 3rd, 2026.
It's a huge stack today.
It really is. And we are going on a journey to the absolute edges of those boundaries. We're looking at a central theme today, pushing boundaries and redefining the rules. We're going to explore how artificial intelligence is fundamentally changing the architecture of human intuition, how we are radically redefining our physical limits, and how our planet and actually our oldest spacecraft are surviving at the absolute extremes.
And what connects all of these seemingly disparate stories is this mechanism of disruption.
Mm.
I mean, we're looking at people, systems, and even animals that are stepping into uncharted territory and just forcing the rest of the world to adapt to a new reality.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the new brains in the room. So the tech world is completely buzzing right now about a London-based AI startup called Ineffable Intelligence.
Oh, yeah, the valuation is staggering.
Right. They just raised a $1.1 billion seed round, which values the company at $5.1 billion. A $1 billion seed round is almost a contradiction in terms.
It is literally the largest seed round in European history. But, the capital isn't following the product yet.
No.
No, it's following a paradigm shift led by the founder, David Silver.
The DeepMind legend.
The very same. I mean, he led the team that built AlphaGo, which completely shattered our understanding of AI back in 2016 by beating the world's best human Go player.
Right.
But what Silver is doing at Ineffable Intelligence is a complete departure from how current AI works.
How so?
Well, right now, massive language models are trained by scraping the internet. They read billions of human-written sentences, right? They learn by proxy. But Silver's new systems are being built to learn from experience.
Wait, so instead of reading Wikipedia articles about the physics of a bicycle, this new AI is essentially being put on the bike.
Exactly.
Like it has to lose its balance, feel the gravity, and scrape its metaphorical knees.
That is the exact mechanism. It's called embodied learning. Silver is creating these environments where the AI acts, fails, adjusts, and learns the underlying physical and logical rules of reality just through pure trial and error. Because when an AI relies entirely on human text, it is inherently constrained by human biases and our historical blind spots. By learning from raw experience, it can discover solutions that humanity has, collectively walked past.
Which isn't just theoretical anymore, right? Because we're already seeing algorithms find paths through the woods that we just couldn't see.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's look at the 80-minute miracle with Liam Price. He's this 23-year-old guy with absolutely zero advanced mathematical training.
None at all.
But he decides to tackle a 60-year-old math problem posed by Paul Erdős, who was basically a 20th century mathematical rock star.
And Erdős problems are notoriously brutal. I mean, this specific one deals with finding predictable order hidden inside chaotic, infinite sets of numbers. It's a field known as Ramsey theory.
And Price literally just feeds the parameters of the problem into ChatGPT. And in about 80 minutes, the AI spits out a functional proof.
Unbelievable.
And it didn't just brute force the math. It used a completely novel logical method that human mathematicians had never even attempted for this specific kind of problem.
Yeah. Terence Tao, who is widely considered one of the greatest living mathematicians, actually reviewed it and verified it.
Which forces a massive philosophical reckoning for the academic community, right?
Hey.
A 60-year wall was dismantled in an hour and 20 minutes by someone who, structurally speaking, didn't even understand the wall.
Okay, I mean, I have to push back here. I have to challenge the framing of this achievement.
Sure.
Is a guy with no math background using an AI to solve an Aero's problem just like driving a really fast calculator? Or are we fundamentally outsourcing human intuition? It feels like we are reducing the human role in discovery to simply being the prompt engineer.
What's fascinating here is that is the central tension of the decade. But, equating it to a calculator minimizes what just happened.
How do you mean?
Well, a calculator executes a known formula faster than a human brain. It doesn't invent a novel logical pathway through a theoretical forest. What we are outsourcing isn't calculation. We are outsourcing pattern recognition at a scale and speed that biological neurons simply cannot process.
But the human still has to point the lens, right? The
Aye.
AI didn't wake up on a Tuesday and decide to solve the Urdu's problem out of curiosity. Liam Price provided the ambition, the AI just provided the navigation.
Yeah, exactly. And the downstream effect of this new dynamic where human ambition directs massive artificial intuition is physically rewriting global financial markets.
Oh, completely.
If you look at South Korea, their main stock index, the KOSPI, has been on an unprecedented tear.
The numbers defy gravity. I mean, it started January 2026 at 4,300. By early May, it crossed 6,750.
Wild.
That is a 55% jump in 4 months. And analysts project it could hit 8,000 by year end. And the engine driving that entire national index is almost entirely Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix.
Because to run an AI that can learn from experience or invent new mathematical proofs, you can't just use standard processing chips. You need an immense continuous flow of data,
Right.
which requires a highly specialized type of advanced memory chip.
So it's like these memory chips act as the short-term working memory of the AI. It's not just crunching numbers. It has to hold the entire context of a complex experience or a 6-year-old math problem simultaneously in its mind to find those hidden patterns.
Precisely. And South Korea has a virtual stranglehold on manufacturing the highest tier of that specific hardware. The KOSPI's 55% jump is the global market, pricing in the reality that intuition is being industrialized. And South Korea controls the infrastructure.
Which completely rephrases the question of ownership. Like, if we are industrializing intuition, who actually gets the credit for the output?
That is the big question.
It reminds me of the British contemporary artist Damien Hirst and his famous spot paintings. It's this massive series over 1,400 canvases since 1986, featuring grids of perfectly round, uniquely colored dots.
But the open secret of the art world is that Hirst rarely paints them himself. He employs an army of assistants to execute the physical labor.
So it forces the question, right? Who is the true artist? The person who creates the conceptual rulebook, the prompt engineer, or the person mixing the paint and applying it to the canvas?
Right. And Hirst has always argued that the art is the idea and the execution is just mechanics.
Yeah.
And we are seeing Hirst's philosophy scale up to engulf the entire global economy. Look at Stripe.
Oh, huge.
They are the quiet, invisible plumbing behind online payments. At their recent annual conference in San Francisco, they announced 288 new products and hit a staggering $159 billion valuation.
And their strategy is entirely about automating execution. They are chasing 3 massive sectors. First, traditional finance. Second, crypto.
Which is big.
Yeah, they are expanding stablecoin infrastructure to over 150 countries so businesses can send digital dollars instantly, ignoring borders and banking hours. And third, they're building the financial layer for AI.
Which is where this gets philosophically weird.
Yeah.
Stripe is partnering with Google, Meta, and OpenAI to give AI chatbots digital wallets.
Wait, really?
Yes. Very soon, your AI assistant won't just draft emails. It will have agency in the economy. It will be able to shop, negotiate prices, and execute payments on your behalf.
So I have the idea like I need new running shoes and I outsource the mechanical execution of browsing, comparing, and purchasing to my AI.
Yep.
It's Damien Hirst's assistants painting the dots, but for daily errands. But if my AI wallet is negotiating with a retailer's AI storefront using Stripe's infrastructure, human beings are entirely removed from the transaction.
We
Right?
basically become the conceptual artists of our own lives,
Yeah.
delegating the tedious execution to machines.
That's wild. But while we automate commerce and math, there is a boundary AI hasn't crossed, and that's authentic cultural legacy.
True.
An algorithm can fake a transaction, but it cannot fake human charisma, which perfectly transitions to the new Michael Jackson biopic, Michael.
Starring his real-life nephew, Jafar Jackson.
Yeah. It just shattered box office records. It opened to $97 million in the US and $218 million worldwide in its first weekend. It blew past the records set by Bohemian Rhapsody and Oppenheimer.
The appetite for that specific era of hyper-concentrated human stardom is clearly still massive.
There's this brilliant anecdote from the editor of our source material. They were watching the film at a theater in the Kerry Center, and there's a scene where Michael is floating in a pool, and when asked what he's thinking about, he says he's praying God give them more ideas, because otherwise the inspiration will all go to Prince.
It perfectly distills that almost mythic rivalry. And the editor actually noted seeing MJ live in Singapore and Prince in Boston, observing that they represented a breed of singular gravitational superstars that simply doesn't exist anymore.
And that magnetism just defies generations.
Hmm.
The editor pointed out that MJ's song Beat. It is currently making a massive organic comeback among 10-year-olds at an international school in Shanghai.
That's amazing.
Right. The kids born decades after the music was recorded are resonating with it.
Because true cultural impact escapes its own era.
Speaking of escaping eras and changing the rules of Hollywood, today, May 3rd, is a landmark anniversary.
Oh, that's right.
On May 3, 2002, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, starring Tobey Maguire, hit theaters. It was the first movie ever to cross $100 million in a single opening weekend, and it eventually made $825 million globally.
And it fundamentally rewired the business model of entertainment. I mean, before Spider-Man, Hollywood still relied primarily on the human charisma we just talked about. You put Tom Cruise or Julia Roberts on a poster to guarantee a hit.
Yeah.
But Spider-Man proved that intellectual property was the new superstar. It birthed the modern superhero boom and laid the groundwork for the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It was the transition from betting on people to betting on IP. And we see that same IP dominance tomorrow, May 4th, Star Wars Day.
Right, May the 4th.
The May the 4th be with you pun actually started organically among fans back in 1979, but Disney acquired Lucasfilm in 2012 and fully weaponized it into this global corporate-sponsored holiday.
We just codify our culture and engineer our entertainment to be as friction-free and predictable as possible.
Which brings us to a really fascinating paradox. As we engineer all the friction out of our daily lives, we seem compulsively driven to artificially reintroduce it just to test our physical limit.
Yes, it's the ultimate contrast of engineering versus endurance.
Let's look at the engineering extreme first. In southwest China, the Huajiang Grand Canyon Bridge just opened in Guizhou province. It is now officially the tallest bridge in the world.
It's a marvel.
The deck sits 626 meters high over the Beipan River. You could slide the entire Empire State Building underneath this bridge and still have hundreds of feet of clearance above the spire.
That is just crazy to wrap my head around.
It takes a grueling, winding 2-hour drive through the canyon and turns it into a perfectly flat 2-minute crossing. Guizhou province now holds 3 of the 7 tallest bridges on Earth. It is the absolute triumph of efficiency over geography.
But the human brain rebels against total efficiency.
Exactly. Which explains Ollie Jenks and Seth Scott. They just set a Guinness World Record for the longest journey completed in a 3-wheeled car.
I love this story.
They took a 1970s Reliant Robin, which is this notoriously wobbly, unstable little British car designed strictly for driving to the local market named Sheila, and drove 14,000 miles from London to Cape Town, South Africa.
Across 22 countries, over 4 months. And the original designer of the car famously admitted he wouldn't feel safe driving it more than 20 miles.
Oh, wow.
They had to replace the engine in Cameroon and the gearbox in Ghana. They had to load the car onto a cattle truck at one point and arrived in Benin right in the middle of an attempted political coup.
And Sheila, the car is now resting safely in the London Transport Museum, but it perfectly highlights this duality, right? We build a hyper-efficient mega bridge in China to avoid a 2-hour drive, and simultaneously 2 guys spend 4 months nursing a broken 3-wheeled car across the desert just to see if the human spirit can survive the mechanical failure.
And we see that exact same mechanism, the pursuit of voluntary suffering, playing out across the sports world right now.
Oh, let's look at how we are shattering limits across the board, starting with cognitive friction. At the Nebraska Championship for the Rubik's Cube, Jabin Keen won the classic 3x3 event in 8.68 seconds.
Fast.
But Evan Liu completely broke the scale. He won 7 events, including memorizing 15 cubes, putting on a blindfold, and solving 13 of them entirely from spatial memory in under an hour.
That is the biological equivalent of the advanced memory chips we discussed earlier, holding massive amounts of complex data in working memory and executing a physical task without visual feedback.
And then there is pure physical agony, like HYRX. It's a fitness race that started in Germany in 2017 and is now taking over the globe.
Oh, I've heard of this.
Yeah, you run a kilometer, do an intense functional workout like sled pushes, and repeat that 8 times. It is coming to New York City next month at Pier 76, and 50,000 athletes are signed up. 50,000 people paying money to endure an hour of absolute muscular failure.
It's wild.
Yeah.
And in professional cycling, you have the Liège-Bastogne-Liège race, which is a brutal 260-kilometer trek through the Belgian hills. World champion Tadej Pogačar launched an agonizing attack on a devastating climb.
Yeah.
And the only person who could match his pain tolerance and stick to his wheel was a 19-year-old French rookie named Paul Seixas, who finished second and instantly became the sport's next phenomenon.
But limits aren't just being pushed physically, right? Tactical paradigms are being shattered. Look at the UEFA Champions League semifinal, where Paris Saint-Germain beat Bayern Munich 5-4.
Unbelievable game.
It was the highest-scoring semifinal in history. Bayern's Kane and Elise scored, but PSG's Kvaratskhelia and Dembele both scored twice. The offensive schemes have just evolved past the defensive rules.
And we are seeing the same systemic overthrow in the NBA playoffs. The old guard is being completely dismantled by a faster, more positionless style of play.
The upsets are staggering. Embiid's 76ers knocked out Tatum's Celtics in 7. The Timberwolves eliminated Jokic's Nuggets. Wembanyama's Spurs took down Portland. LeBron's Lakers beat Houston. The Thunder swept the Suns, and the Knicks beat the Hawks. The tactical rule book of the last decade has been rendered obsolete in a single postseason.
Although, occasionally rigid rulebooks still manage to stifle human potential. Like the NCAA just changed ice hockey eligibility rules.
Right.
They are starting a player's eligibility clock the year they turn 19, regardless of college enrollment.
Which fundamentally misunderstands international education. K-12 systems in Europe and Quebec do not align with the American calendar. So an elite international student arrives at a U.S. college already stripped of a year or two of eligibility, not because of a lack of skill, but because of a bureaucratic calendar mismatch.
It is an artificial boundary constraining human talent. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, past our own artificial rules, we have to confront the ultimate boundary setter, the Earth itself.
Yes. We push our bodies, but right now the environment is pushing back with terrifying force. India is currently suffering through a historic pre-summer heat wave, with temperatures sustaining between 45 and 46 degrees Celsius. That's 113 to 115 degrees Fahrenheit.
The sheer scale of the heat is difficult to comprehend.
To put it in perspective, 95 of the 100 hottest cities in the world right now are in India. It is altering the daily rhythm of millions of lives. Schools are slashing their hours, and the government is urging farmers to harvest their wheat early before the ambient heat literally bakes the crops in the fields.
And this localized extreme is a precursor to a global shift. Scientists are tracking the development of a super El Niño later this year.
And a super El Niño doesn't just mean a few unusually warm days. We're talking about massive swaths of the Pacific Ocean crossing a critical threshold of being more than 2 degrees Celsius above normal, which physically warps the global jet streams, right?
Exactly. It fundamentally reschedules the planet's weather patterns all the way into 2027. The models predict heavy, destructive rain and flooding across California and South America, while simultaneously triggering severe droughts and wildfire conditions in Australia and Indonesia.
It's just extremes everywhere.
Yeah, it suppresses the Atlantic hurricane season, but virtually guarantees that 2026 will set yet another all-time global heat record.
The planet is roasting. But to find the absolute contrast to that suffocating heat, we have to look out into the freezing, empty isolation of interstellar space. NASA's Voyager 1.
Which was launched in 1977, almost 49 years ago.
It is currently more than 16 billion miles away from Earth. But it operates on a tiny nuclear power source that decays, losing about 4 watts of power every single year.
Which forces NASA engineers into a constant state of triage. I mean, to keep the core communications alive, they have to sacrifice the science. On April 17th, they sent a command across 16 billion miles of vacuum to power down yet another scientific instrument.
The mission is no longer about discovery. It's about pure survival. They are trying to nurse the probe to its 50th birthday in 2027 and hopefully squeeze out enough power to keep a heartbeat into the 2030s.
There is something profoundly haunting about the most distant human-made object slowly going dark and freezing to death.
The isolation of that is heavy.
It really is.
So let's contrast that deep space isolation with the story of profound human connection right here on Earth. There is a viral video circulating that is just an absolute emotional gut punch. It's about a young Iranian boy named Raiden who attends school in China.
It's a powerful testament to the community kids build.
Raiden went back to Iran in mid-January to visit his father for what was supposed to be a 3-week trip. But geopolitical conflict broke out, borders tightened, and communications were completely severed. His classmates in China didn't hear a single word from him for 42 days.
Oh my goodness.
They didn't know if he was safe or if he was ever coming back.
And then the video captures the exact moment he returns.
He just walks quietly back into his classroom. And you see the exact second his classmates realize it's him. They don't just say hello, the entire room erupts. Kids are sprinting across the room, knocking over chairs, just to grab him in this massive, chaotic, weeping pile of hugs. It is the pure antithesis of Voyager's isolation.
In a world of algorithmic learning and global heat waves, it really grounds us back in our shared humanity.
Okay, before we wrap up this massive journey, we have to end on a lighter note. A story about ignoring the rules entirely and just taking up space.
Ah, you're talking about the heavyweight of the dock.
Chonkers. A 2,000-pound stellar sea lion has taken up residence at San Francisco's Pier 39 and become an absolute celebrity.
And Pier 39 is highly managed, usually populated by California sea lions, which are much smaller. Chonkers is a completely different species.
Built more like a bear.
Yeah, exactly. He's built like a grizzly.
When he decides to haul his 2,000-pound mass out of the water and onto the wooden docks, the normal sea lions literally scatter in a panic. He completely disrupts the established ecosystem of the pier just by existing. And now, hundreds of tourists gather every morning to stand in awe and watch this massive animal simply sleep. He redefined the environment.
Nature doesn't really care about our managed expectations.
Not at all. Well, we have covered incredible ground today. We looked at David Silver's AI moving from reading to experiencing, the financial tidal wave in South Korea, and the philosophical debate of Stripe letting AI shop for us.
We explored human magnetism with Michael Jackson's legacy versus the IP empire of Spider-Man.
We marveled at a 626-meter bridge, eliminating friction, and two guys in a wobbly three-wheeled car seeking it out. We documented shattered limits in sports, the sheer heat of India, the freezing triage of Voyager 1, and the warmth of Raiden's return.
It is a profound cross-section of where humanity currently stands.
So to decompress, I want to share two quick, brilliant notes from the editor of the source material. First, a terrible dad joke to cleanse the palate. Why is 6 afraid of 7?
Oh no, the
Good
7, 8, 9.
You got it.
Mhm.
And second, a wonderful historical anecdote about the Japanese writer Kenzabusha. When he was a boy, he confidently promised his mother that one day he would win the Nobel Prize in physics.
All right.
He grew up, went to university, entirely pivoted to French literature, and eventually became one of Japan's most celebrated authors, winning the Nobel Prize in literature.
A monumental historic achievement.
Right. So he goes to his mother and says, "See? I kept my promise. I won the Nobel Prize." And her response, "No, you promised it would be in physics."
It proves that no amount of global acclaim can alter the parameters set by a mother.
Never. But it brings us to a final thought I want you to mull over today. We started this deep dive talking about AI systems, like ineffable intelligence learning from experience, and AI wallets executing our daily errands. But if a machine is solving the impossible math problems and algorithms are doing our shopping, what does human experience actually mean moving forward?
If the execution of life is automated, what is left for us?
Exactly. Maybe the true measure of humanity isn't found in perfect logic or building the most efficient 2-minute bridge. Maybe the core of the human experience is found in the messy, gloriously inefficient things we choose to do.
Yeah.
Like spending 4 months driving a broken Reliant Robin across a desert just to see if we can. Or a massive sea lion taking a nap where he isn't supposed to. Or the unfiltered, illogical joy of a classroom of kids knocking over desks to hug a friend they haven't seen in 42 days.
The friction is the point.
Exactly. The loopholes in the rulebook, the things an AI can never replicate. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Sunday Blender. Go out and experience something wonderfully inefficient today. We'll catch you next time.
Take care, everyone.